Hey everyone, welcome to Wildlife Inspired. I'm your host, Scott Keys, and this is your channel for photography, for wildlife, and for wildlife photography. In today's video, we're going to talk about traveling accessories, things you really need to bring along when you're headed out on the road. And I've got a lot of product on this table to talk about, and we'll get to it right after this. Recently, I had someone ask me, what do I need to take on a trip? I'm traveling for a week. What do I need to bring and what can't I forget? And I thought, well, what a great topic to talk about. I actually put a question out on Instagram. What are the things you bring with you when you travel 100% of the time? And these aren't cameras or lenses. Probably not talking about tripods and things like that in this video. Really, it's about what do we get in these carry-on devices that you don't want to leave at home and you don't want to forget about. We're going to cover that in this video. You're going to find it really, really helpful. I'm going to put chapters down at the bottom. So if there's a product you're interested in, find the chapter and then there'll be a description down below. I'll put links to as much of this stuff as I can. There's a lot on this table, so I'm not going to link everything. But there's going to be a lot of helpful information in here. There's actually a couple things that came through my Instagram audience that I did not bring, and I thought, wow, that's actually a pretty good idea. So let's start with the biggest items and we'll work down from there. But I want to talk real quickly about these two items right here. When traveling, for me, I like to have two carry-on bags. Now, check with your airlines. I've traveled a lot. I very rarely get challenged on this. One time I did. This is a carry-on sized container. I did a video on these. Again, I'm going to put a lot of references because I've done a lot of videos on some of this and I don't want to be redundant. But this is a Pelican 1510, a very standard sized carry-on. I can get in here, my big lens, my big body, and I can take some of the stuff on this table and actually put it in here as well. We're going to talk about what you might want to be a little bit more careful about with where you put it, but for just the sake of this video, and I want to get it off this table, this is one of my carry-ons. So this is the hard case, so you can hear it. It's waterproof. I really, really like that. This is my soft case. Now, I can't give you a link for this product because they don't make it anymore. I've never found a backpack that I like more than this one, so I've just never upgraded it. I've talked to my audience. I like this one because it opens in the front, where a lot of the modern ones open in the back. There's some downside to this, by the way. It might be a reason the company went out of business. In here, I'm gonna carry smaller lenses, maybe an extra body, and this is where I'm gonna put a lot of the accessories that are on this table. They're gonna go right in here in one of these compartments. Now, this I consider my personal bag. So I've got my carry-on, and this is my other personal bag. If you are carrying multiple bags, so if you've got a handbag, for example, the airline might give you a hard time about carrying another carry-on plus this as your personal bag. I'm going to go ahead and put this down because, again, I'm just trying to clean off some table space. I'm not going to spend a lot of time on this video talking about photography-related products, but there were some things that came to mind and things that people brought up in my Instagram story. So let me just talk about a couple things. Wildlife photographers, I'm surprised nobody mentioned filters. I had hundreds of responses for this because we are wildlife photographers, not landscape photographers. If you're doing landscape, you might want to think about some filters as I start to clean this desk off a little bit. I did not mention carrying devices. I would put on your list, and on my, I'm going to show you a master list of all this stuff at the end. This is my checklist. By the way, you are listening to somebody who might have the worst short-term memory in the history of civilization. I can't remember anything, and I really do rely on these checklists before I travel not to forget anything. So it's a really, really good idea to create your own checklist. At the end of the video, I'm going to put my checklist up here. But there are a couple other little accessories. People mentioned teleconverters. So photography related, certainly an item that I would bring along on a travel trip. And in addition, depending on destination, in addition to like a tripod or a monopod, I almost always, at the very, very least, since it's a travel video and I can get this in one of these bags, I take a mini tripod. This is helpful for a lot of reasons, but I can do certain things with this with a very small, maybe a ball head or something a little bit smaller than I typically would use as a wildlife photographer. I just like the ability to have something stable. So if I'm doing a landscape scene, and that's not my genre, but if I'm doing it, if I'm out in a beautiful location, I want to do that. I want to have something a little more stable. This at least gives me something that I can mount my camera to reliably. So mini tripods, I really like these as well. All right, let me pop my list open for what's on the table, and we're going to start with some of the actual storage. And I really want to spend a little bit of time talking about power and accessories because that came up on a lot of checklists, and I'm not sure that everybody understands some of these terminologies. So we'll spend a little bit of time talking about power. Now, when I think of power, I'm thinking about portable power banks. I'm going to show you an example of a couple that I have up here, and I want to explain a little bit about these. This is an old one I had, and these devices are measured with a few criteria. The major one being milliamp hours. I'll put some of the information on here. You're going to see this on every power bank that you attempt to buy. And all I want you to think about this is storage capacity. The higher the number, normally in increments of about 10,000, the higher the number, the more storage it has. A little device like this is 10,000 milliamp hours. I could expect to charge my iPhone a couple times. Now, I had a company reach out to me and send me a couple of devices. So I want to talk about this company and these two power devices and how they differed. So this one, the company's called INIU. They sent me this fast charger. A couple things I liked about this. One, it was 25,000 milliamp hours. The highest level of these, practically for storage and travel, is going to be between 20,000 and 40,000. So this fits into a nice range. And get several charges out of this. I actually did a comparison, by the way, I'll show it to you in just a minute, where I compared my old charger, I have several of these, to this new charger and the speed at which it delivered. So I've got two of them here. I'll show you the differences. But before I do, I want to talk about this idea of capacity and speed. So I already mentioned capacity, milliamp hours, the higher the better. 40,000's a lot, 25,000's a pretty good number. So I felt like this is going to give me lots of charges on my iPhone or any of these other devices we might have, including a laptop. When we talk about speed, we're talking about a couple different ideas or a couple different terms. So I'm going to put them up here. And don't get confused, I'll make it real simple. Voltage, current or amperage, and watts. And the reason I'm mentioning all three is different chargers are going to reference different things. Watts being, if I have this correct, and I'm not an electrician, but watts being the voltage times the amp. Voltage often 5 volts. Amps can change. Your device will be rated. So for example, this is rated on different capacities at 100 watts or 45 watts. This one might be rated down a little bit from that. And this is a smaller device that I'll show you in just a minute. What's important to know is that the more watts you have, the faster your actual charging will go. So we have the milliamp hours, that's your capacity, how big the device is, how fast it works. That's going to be determined by voltage, amperage, or watts. I think I got that right. Don't get obsessed with that. But let me give you an example. My old charger charged my iPhone from 10%, and I charged it for 1 hour, and it went from 10% to 56%. So in 1 hour, I was able to take this charger and get to 56%. Not only is this a bigger capacity on this INIU charger, but this one was also faster. So in the same hour, I got to 93%. So it's a much faster charge. Now, there's a couple things to keep in mind. I did that charge with 2 different cables. Your cables also matter. So when we talk about traveling and what to bring, make sure you've got the proper cables. I keep a Ziploc bag. I'm sure some of you do the same thing, right? You've got your Ziploc bag full of chargers. I've got several cables in there, and I try to make sure I have one of each type of cable. There's a lot of different cables. I don't want to get into it, but you've probably heard terms like USB-C-A, USB-C-C, micro USB. There's just a lot of different chargers. Make sure that you're using the correct cable. One of the things I found out when I was kind of doing this experiment was there is a bottleneck. So whatever device you use, I'm going to put all 3 of these out here. The charger, how fast it can transmit, the iPhone or your phone device, whatever the device is, how much can it actually accept? So if this can put out 45, this can only take 15, the 45 is overkill. But there's another part, which is the actual cable itself. I used an older cable, a USB-A to lightning connection for this, and it charged much slower. When I used an updated cable, USB-C to lightning, it charged much faster. So I'll put some of that information up here just in terms of charging times and what I found, but I was really, really happy, and thank you, INIU, for sending me this. I really, really like that one. This is going to be my permanent travel device. I wanted to show you one more that they sent me because I really like this one too. It's cableless. So using iPhones, we have these magnetic connections in back, and I can charge this. I'll put the charging time up for this. Same experiment, it went down to 10%. I put it on the charger, and I really liked this, something like an airplane where you might not want to have cables, but it also pops out, so I can use it as a stand while it's charging. So just another neat device. Talked a lot about power on this one because I do think every person that's traveling is going to take one of these devices with you. Gave you a little bit of facts here to help you out. I hope you found that helpful. And again, thank you for sending me some free product to actually review or look at. Not a full review. I told the company when they send me this, I'm happy to include it in this video because I'm going to talk about power sources. And I was really curious how much better these are. I got about 3 times as many charges out of this new one, and it charged about 40% faster than my old charger. So really, really excited about that. So now we've got our device, what we're going to carry onto the plane. We've got some power. We've talked a little bit about these cables. Just make sure you do a full inventory of the cables you're bringing. Don't assume because some of them look the same. But we also need to talk a little bit more about storage, this time not with power, but with actual memory storage. I'm going to show you a couple things that I've got here. Quick story, I was talking to somebody, talking about memory cards, how many they have, how do you carry them? I throw them in a Ziploc bag. Probably not the greatest way to store memory cards. I would strongly suggest, no brand loyalty here, but I'm going to show you a couple. They go from, $8 to $10 on Amazon. I actually use this one. It's a very, very inexpensive one. I've got some cards up on the top, and these batteries are specific for one of my Nikon cameras. Really, really like it. So I've always got my spare batteries in a place that's being held. The one case I use the most is by Pelican. Again, no brand loyalty here, but I like that company. There's my 6 cards in here. And one of the things I just want to put out as a tip, if you do this, and I learned my lesson the hard way, put a tether on it. So I keep this in my backpack. I'm going to tether this to my backpack with a little carabiner clip. Get this on Amazon for like a couple dollars. This will save you. I went down to South Texas one time, had this in my backpack, no tether. Went to get my memory cards, had 2 cases. I lost a case. That case cost me several $100s worth of memory cards. And thankfully, I hadn't shot anything yet and put it into that case, but I did lose the actual cards. Imagine spending a whole trip, having all your memory cards, putting them into a case, and then losing the case entirely, and your whole trip is now stuck in the woods somewhere or out in the middle of nowhere where anybody's going to find it. So I've heard those disaster stories. Please do yourself a favor. Get a case, tether that case, or have some backup system in place. To that extent, I want to talk about the next thing, which is backup systems. So we've got our memory cards, we've got it stored and protected. I would strongly suggest the use of, and I don't have my laptop out here, but taking a small laptop and instead of storing the images on the laptop, maybe you want to upload it to the cloud if you can, or a very small portable, this is just a small hard drive that you can take with you. I'm not going to put a whole list up there, but I had somebody ask me recently, what size hard drive should I take? And is there a brand that you like? I'm not going to get into brands on this. There's several. SanDisk makes them. Lexar makes them. I recommended, and I'll put it down in the video description of the actual one I recommended. I own all of this stuff, so none of this was given to me except for those power chargers. Nothing's on loan here, but I do shop from B&H, so I'll put some B&H links down there. That Lexar device looked really, really good to me with great reviews, and it was about 4 terabytes. Some people ask, like, well, how much do I need? I can't tell you the answer to that. It's going to depend on how heavy your finger is, what type of file formats you use, and if you shoot images or videos together. As a rule, and this is a broad rule, for every 30,000 pictures that I take, I need about 1 terabyte of raw data storage for still images. That is a rough estimate, but if I'm going to be out for a week, I need to know how many images I can expect to take. If I'm only taking a couple thousand images, not a big deal. I've known people to come back from trips and take 50 to 100,000 images. I don't know how you do it. God bless you. You need another week of vacation just to process and cull them, and you still might not get through it all. So as a rule, 1 terabyte for every 30,000, and then I double it to be safe. So if I'm going to plan on 30,000, 2 terabytes. If I'm going to shoot video, I want even more. My recommendation is, because storage gets a little cheaper as it gets bigger, so the price doesn't come down, but the price per terabyte comes down, maybe look between 2 and 4. If I was recommending somebody going on a week vacation with a heavy finger and shooting videos, think about 4 terabytes of backup storage. How much do I take in this case? I also take about the same. I have 2 to 4 terabytes of information on my SD cards or my QXD cards or my CF Express cards. But currently, that's about what I need for a week or two. And I don't normally run out. But even if you can fit all of your information on storage cards, I would recommend backing it up in the field. If something happens, you don't want to lose that trip. And this isn't a video about how to organize it, but often I'll just shoot a memory card a day and kind of label it so that I know that day I took that memory card. And then even if I haven't filled it, I'll put a fresh memory card in for the next day. So I try to have enough memory cards for the number of days that I'm shooting. And then again, I'm going to try to back that up in the field. Because these hard drives, most of them do not back up directly. So I can't plug my camera in and plug it into this and send that data. On some cameras, you may be able to do that. And there are backup storage devices that can do that. So there's a little display screen on there. Personally, I don't use that. I go into my laptop and then out to an external storage device. So probably another video for another day. But in that process, you might want to remember your memory card reader. Now, some cameras you can just plug right into the computer and download. Some older cameras you can't. So know what your camera is capable of in terms of transferring that data, and don't forget your memory card reader. All right, now before I get out of the electronics part of this video, I do want to mention a couple other things that came up that I thought were good. Any kind of remote trigger. They're very, very small. I actually like to use wireless triggers. This is a cabled trigger, any type of trigger. They're not super expensive depending on what you buy. I did a video about it a while, so I'll reference that video over here if you're curious. But there's a lot of good uses for triggers in general. So even if you're not sure if you're going to use it, sometimes it's good. And again, it's very, very small and they travel easily. So maybe throw that one in your case. If you're shooting macro, you might also want to think about a flash. It's going to take up a little bit more space. It's going to get a little tight in my bags. Usually I do not personally bring a flash, but if you are a macro photographer, you're going to need a flash. And if you're thinking about doing some macro photography while you're on vacation, maybe consider adding a flash as well. Now let's start into some of the non-electronic things to bring along. And just about every person I talked to mentioned cleaning accessories. I've got 2 here. Put it on your checklist. Don't forget it. Generally, this is another Ziploc item. I know people that just have bags of these. This is one I keep in my bag all the time. So even if I forget the Ziploc of lens wipes, you can find these. This is by Nikon. Many different companies make these. B&H has their own, I think, with their logo on it. It's just a little lens wipe that goes inside here, a little microfiber cloth, and then it puts back in here. It's got a little clip on it, so I clip it on my bag. It stays there all the time. A lot of people mentioned air brushes. There's a lot of these. This is a very, very cheap one. You're talking like a couple dollars. Little brush pops off, squirt some air out there, put this in there for a couple dollars. They do make much nicer ones, by the way. I'm going to link the more popular brand down below because I can't even personally remember where I found this one. The thing I liked about this is this little brush on there as well. So a little dirt, you can clean that off. One of the things that's going to be difficult to do during your traveling is clean your sensor. So at the very least, if you're changing lenses out in the field, it is a good idea to just blow a little bit of that out. You get a piece of dirt or dust or debris on your sensor during a vacation, during that travel adventure, it's going to not ruin, but it's going to be on every picture you take until you get that little speck off. So do not ever, by the way, blow into your sensor. To do that, there's moisture in your breath. Sometimes you'll get actual like little spit into the sensor. None of that is good for electronics. I've been out in the field with some of you. Listen, I've smelled your breath out in the field. And if I was a camera, I'd probably not function properly after being that close to your breath. So please, just very cheap, very inexpensive. A couple other things came up in my video that I did not have on my list, but I added it to my list. So I'm gonna go over a couple things. First of all, this is what is on my list. This is an iPhone holder. I did an accessory video about this. I really, really like this. So this one's by Leo Photo. It's a magnetic one, so it sticks right to my iPhone. If I'm doing some casual content creation, or let's say there's just a pretty little video I wanna take real quick, you know what it's like trying to handhold your iPhone or your little phone device as you're taking video. I can just stick it on here and clip a sunrise or a sunset. Look how small this one is. Arca Swiss compatible, so I can put it on a ball head. I mean, it's nothing, so I might as well bring that along. Somebody mentioned tools. A lot of people actually mentioned Allen wrenches. I have this tiny little portable case. I don't even know if I have a link for this one. It's got some Allen wrenches in there. It's got one of these screwdrivers with a couple of heads on it, some zip ties. It really is a good idea to carry something. So if you can fit something small Allen wrench set might be good. In this case, just a little extra. This is good if let's say you got a cage or an L bracket attached that's coming loose. Maybe you've got a tripod that you took with you that could use some tightening up somewhere. It's just a good idea to have. And again, if you can find one that doesn't take up much space. And as I go through this, two more items came up on my list. I had to keep them back here because they're a little bit bigger. Camouflage. So not a video about camouflage, but yes, I always have, as a wildlife guy, I always have camouflage. Doesn't matter how big. This is probably about a 4 foot by 3 foot section of camouflage. I'll just tuck that up. It rolls up into nothing. And I'll just throw that in a bag somewhere. And then the last one that we often don't think about that somebody mentioned, and this is a good one because this is one I do actually put on my checklist, is a rain cover. Now, I'm not going to tell you which one to buy. I think this one's by Lens Coat. There's a couple companies that make these. If I find the brand of this or the exact model, I'll put it down there so you can link right to it. But these are really, really, really helpful. You should always, even in your car, have some sort of rain protection, personal rain protection, and protection for your equipment. You can buy this stuff for literal dollars. They make some cheap, I call them the plastic bag rain covers, but you can get some cheap plastic bags off of Amazon or B&H. Cost a few dollars. Always have them in your trunk. Always put one in your backpack. They roll up, they don't take up any space, and it's there if you need it. And while I have, yes, used a trash bag out in the field that I've grabbed from somewhere and put it around my camera, it is not ideal to do that. And just having a cheap plastic bag that's kind of meant for your size lens is really, really helpful. There was one more on my list that I did not have on my list. I actually added it to my list. Somebody said business cards. And I thought, wow, that's a great idea. I have business cards normally in my car. I don't travel with them often. But imagine I'm sitting next to somebody on a plane that's got a great interest in this, or if I'm out in the field and I meet somebody while I'm traveling, it's really, really easy. Listen, I know the younger generation is going to have some phone device and they're going to tap phones or have their QR code there. Maybe you put a QR code on your business card. I'm a little old school. So I've got my business cards that I made, 6 years ago, 7 years ago. I still use the same ones. I'm looking at them. They're still okay. They're not doing too bad. So I thought that was a nice suggestion. So I'm going to put this on the list and now I'm going to recap it. I'm going to put it all up there. We talked a lot about some of these easy to carry things, what you don't want to forget. And your checklist might be a little different than mine. Put mine up here. What do you think? And I know somebody's out there thinking you missed this one. Put it down in the comments and let me know. And there's a few other things down in the comments that I'm kind of curious about. When you travel, how much storage do you typically require on your destination? Let's assume a 1 week trip is planned. How much storage? How many memory cards do you need in here to be comfortable? How big are those memory cards? And how about your backup system? What do you use? Let me know down in the comments. So how much storage do you take? What did I miss on my list? What's that one go-to item that you never miss? And do you have a story to share? One time you forgot that thing. One time you forgot that SD card tether and you left your SD cards and you lost your trip because you couldn't find out where your storage was. Let me know down in the comments what you think about this travel video. I hope you found it useful. Thanks for watching. Make sure you're subscribed to the channel. Go down, click the little subscribe button. You know the drill. Hit the bell for notifications. Make sure you give it a thumbs up. By doing those things, this video gets pushed out to the audience with similar interests to yours and mine, and they're really, really going to find it helpful. Check out some of the links down below. And as always, I hope we can continue to find inspiration in wildlife together.